Pop culture pastor.
So Cody, I felt like that the pod we've been just about average lately, and I think it's because you've been playing too meh, but you need to play through meh.
I don't even know what that means.
What do you mean you don't know what it means? We saw it on the field. Total football. Total potting.
Yeah. I don't know how you do that on podcast.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but it was fun to say. I just like trying to say things in his interesting voice. Phil Dunster is the actor's name, and I saw him do an interview, and he does not have that wild of an accent when he's normally talking, and it kind of disappointed me.
You know who does have a wild accent, but whenever they talk on TV, in television and movies, it's not that wild.
Who?
That would be David Tennant.
Oh, really?
So, depending on where you're from on that side of the pond, you get a wide range. Kind of like people from Boston versus people from Kansas.
Boston. Well, I got a number, so how you like them apples? That's the only... Every time I think of Boston, I just think of Good Will Hunting.
I think about that car commercial.
Which car commercial is that?
Where they're talking about parking the car.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
self-parking, and it has like all the famous Bostonians.
What are you watching where you actually watch commercials?
The Super Bowl. That's where.
Okay. We're here. This is Watch Alongs on Pop Culture Pastor. And of course, we are watching Ted Lasso, and we're ready for season 3, episode 7, The Strings That Bind Us.
Ayo.
Yeah. Literally the weakest part of the episode for me. Although, I'll just say, this one was not a stronger episode for me.
Oh, I love this episode.
You love this episode. See, we're opposite on Ted Lasso appreciation, I think.
Like the strings were a very physical representation of the overall point of the episode.
Yeah. It came off as very slapsticky for me. But I get it.
Because Roy, in his mind, like otherwise, I think the strings might have been attached to your wrist or something. And that would have been more like less slapstick.
I mean, like, look, I laughed when they thought they maimed Jamie. And it is funny that it's Roy's idea. But what's even more funny, and will never not be funny, is when he yells whistle.
Yes.
That cracks me up. That kills me.
He has a metal allergy.
But can we get you a plastic whistle there, Roy? No. Yeah, so this episode opens, I mean, it just kind of picks up where the last one leaves off. And we're still seeing much of the after effects of Gaelic, right? Everything's sort of building on that. In fact, we open on the Cranberries song Dreams, which opens with the lyrics. Do you know the song? Were you a big fan of the song, Cody?
Not many people in Southeast Kansas were blaring much of the Cranberries.
Oh, that makes me so sad. This was such a good song. Okay. Anyways, as soon as it started playing at the beginning of the episode, I got excited because building off of last week's episode, which is one of my favorite episodes of Ted Lasso ever. The lyrics, "Oh, my life is changing every day in every possible way. And oh, my dreams, it's never quite as it seems, never quite as it seems. I know I felt like this before, but now I'm feeling it even more because it came from you. Then I open up and see the person falling here is me, a different way to be." And it's just a very hopeful song. And it makes you feel good. The song just itself is one of those songs you listen to and it makes you feel good.
Did nothing. Like, I don't even like where there's been episodes where the music I felt was very relevant. This one did not feel so relevant.
Really?
Yeah, no.
I promise you, this song is super relevant. I was just about to say the music choices this season have been on point.
Yeah, no, this one did not do much for my insights.
Look, Cody, you're playing to me, but I need you to play through me. Okay, that's fair. We can just move on, but that's, beg to differ. Not beg to differ. Agree to differ.
Agree to disagree.
Although we are we have different buttons that any form of entertainment can hit. That's what makes this so much fun.
So this hit in all the geeky, nerdy buttons.
Yeah,
for me,
this one did. Okay, well then let's just kind of break it down. We of course get. Do we want to break it down by character again?
Like, I think it would probably be helpful to get through some of the general points of the episode, then dive into the characters.
Okay, so general plot of the episode.
Yeah.
We get right into kind of the team. They're gonna settle in and learn this total football.
Total football.
Building on last week's episode where Ted has this vision.
A barbecue hallucination.
Yeah. It's Arthur Bryant's induced hallucination, which, we've all been there. And
happens to the best of us.
So that's what sparks the little team building experiment that Roy concocts where they have attached themselves together by their appendages.
Yes.
And look, it's very slapsticky and it's funny. Like, I laughed. It's not my favorite kind of humor in Ted Lasso, but it was funny. Like, Ted Lasso, this show is never bad. And so they're kind of learning this. It's almost as if the building on the last show, whereas, hey, we found out we're better together. Now we have to learn how to be together.
Yeah.
And you actually see that play out in a couple of the side stories, I think, but we'll get to those in a little bit. So they play Arsenal. They go down 3-0 at halftime. It's a mess and a disaster. They're running into each other on the field. Jamie has his, little speech at halftime. And in the second half, they still lose, but they show something. Something sparks.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're going to, I'm sure, continue to see that build. Meanwhile, all the other characters that are outside of the team and one guy from the team, Sam
Wise, not Gamgee.
They're kind of building on these own little subplots. The Sam one ties nicely back into the team building later on. Sam gets into a Twitter argument with what I'm assuming is a made-up British
Prime minister or chancellor or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and that results in some drama.
It does.
And then there is ongoing relationship things going on with Nate, going on with Keeley.
Yeah.
And Ted and Beard, they're kind of sub players in this episode, I would say. Would you agree with that?
I mean, there's definitely a lot that goes on without them.
Yeah.
Although some of my favorite interaction happens with them, especially when Ted's talking about his facial hair.
That was kind of funny.
And I think you really have to appreciate Midwest / I guess Southern humor, because it was all about the blue collar comedy tour guys.
Oh man. Yeah. When he was, well, first of all, number one, of course, Ted Lasso is a fan of the blue collar comedy tour. Yeah, no doubt. And that he ends up on the Foxworthy, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. That Ted Lasso, if that's a real dude, he absolutely adores Jeff Foxworthy.
Was doing the Larry the Cable Guy.
Yeah, that was highly entertaining. But yeah, for the most part, they're just kind of playing along with the team's subplot in this episode.
Yes. And so when we circle back around to those two, especially Ted, I think Trent and Ted, their final scene together,
Yeah.
chef's kiss to the episode.
Yes. And so that was very interesting to me. I think there's a lot of, I don't know that we're ready to go into this part of the episode yet. We went into some spiritual things in the last episode compared to Gehellig to Shalom. And I think there's a continuation of that, but there's to the point of like, now it's like, how do we love the people we've chosen to be with, right?
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really interesting in these kind of subplot individual stories. Should we start with Keeley?
Might as well.
So this is okay. So thus far, we've seen Jack be nothing but very approachable, very no cracks in the armor, right? For Keeley's new girlfriend.
I'm not sure if there are any cracks in the armor after this episode.
Oh, what? No, there's all sorts of warning flags now.
There's warning flags, but I also think that there is some disservice by a friend.
Okay, so you think the advice and what Rebecca tells her is not cool?
Rebecca's projecting what happened to her onto Jack.
Yeah,
Not necessarily Jack is this evil mastermind that Rupert is. There are some
right.
warning
She's not
flags.
Rupert. She's not Rupert. But I think you're meant to look at this like and be like, I don't know. Okay, so Rebecca says to Keeley that she's being love bombed, which is the showering upon of gifts and using one's resources that not a lot of other people have to really shower the gifts on someone.
I have been waiting my whole life to be love bombed upon.
Who will love bomb me?
I don't require much, but I do like the fancier things in life.
If you would like to love bomb pop culture pastor Dave and Cody, please send an email to popculturepastor@gmail.com with your gift. We won't turn it away. We're waiting on love bombed.
I think this is how Joel Osteen started.
So yeah, Rebecca starts comparing the love bombing by Jack to her own kind of history with Rupert. She's openly comparing him to Rupert. And it does, I think you're right. This does paint Rebecca in a weirdly negative light. And I'm not sure that they meant to do that. Do you think they meant to do that? Or do you think that it's just something you come up with in the writer's room that you just don't put a lot of thought into?
So I think that it could lead to an eventual, Rebecca seeing all these flags. Keeley's like, you're just projecting, like I had said. And then it creates a conflict that they'll have to work through. So it could be intentional. And at that point, it probably will be Jack being closer to Rupert than Jack being this sweetheart of a gal.
Yeah, I guess what I'm feeling is that it was less about making Rebecca look weird and projecty and more about that we're going to find out that Jack is a little bit over the edge, maybe. That I think they're just easing us into it.
She is Sylvester Stallone and over the top.
It was kind of shocking to me that Rebecca, once she finds out that Jack is paying for their meal, which does seem a little stalkery, then adds what I'm assuming are very expensive bottles of wine that she's going to take home.
And
I'm like, wait a minute, you're super filthy rich.
Here's one for you, waitress.
That was wild. I was just like, oh. That painted Rebecca in a really weird light because you're like, oh, does she not like Jack? Does she feel like that she's been replaced in a way by Keeley's relationship?
I took it more as she has been a part of this rich, wealthy crowd for long enough, and that if you really want them to stop, you just take advantage of it. And also that she is probably wondering what Jack's response will be, because she already knows what Rupert's response was.
Yeah. So refresh my memory then. How does this end up with Keely and Jack by the end of the episode? Nothing's resolved. I think they're just...
No.
She does tell her. She does kind of just like say, hey, I don't need all this. But she does keep the book.
And the croissant.
Croissant.
With the ring.
With the ring, which I was like, whoa, 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 what is happening here? But then it wasn't what I thought.
It was just a really nice ring inside of a croissant.
Yeah. That's, that confuses me. I don't know how all this works because, I'm just old fashioned. But I thought like if you were in a relationship and someone gave the other person in the relationship a ring
through food.
With food, I thought, oh, is she going to ask her to marry her? But no, that was not what was happening.
That would have been way too quick.
Yeah.
And I would have said, pump the brakes.
Yeah. I don't know. I got enough red flags, even with Rebecca's weirdly kind of negativity in that conversation. I'm all about Keely. You get out of this, girl. You get out of this. She's not good for you.
Yeah. Ride it. See how it goes.
If you'd like to send a love bomb to Pop Culture Pastor. Yeah, I mean, the showering upon of gifts doesn't suck.
And it does seem like Keely's happy when she's with Jack.
Yeah.
Like the negatives, I guess, is just there definitely is a power structure because one has everything and the other one doesn't have as much. But when they left off after the croissant, they came to an agreement that there could be showering upon of Jack.
Yeah. I think they don't make it through this season. I think she goes back to Roy. I've become convinced of everything ending absolutely the way we want it to after last week's episode and Gehelig and our talking about Shalom and everything as it should be. So I don't think this lasts the season. I think she ends up back with Roy. So maybe I'm just seeing clues that the show's not really telling us, yet.
Now you're projecting onto Keely.
I am projecting.
Everyone's projecting onto Keely.
How dare me? How dare me? This is a good place to swing it to Nate. So we go
Nate the Great.
We go from Jack and the love bombing onto Keely. Now let's talk about Nate. Because Nate, after last week's episode, Nate wasn't really in it except for when he appeared in Ted's vision. And I'm full on board the Nate redemption train. So it was fun to see Nate smiling. And he's getting closer and closer to like season 1 Nate.
And to his family.
Yes. The family stuff was interesting. The idea he gets from his dad's wooing of his mom.
Which Dad was a hopeless romantic.
Oh, are you kidding me? Even when the map, she pulls out the map and they're doing it on the sly because if Dad finds out, I'm assuming he'd be angry, but mostly he'd just be embarrassed. And that's why he'd pretend to be angry.
Yeah.
But super like, oh, I wish I'd have thought of that. That works.
Until it is, well, we grew up about 6 blocks from each other. We went to the same school forever.
Yeah, that's not nearly as cool. Is that your story?
No, that is
okay.
not. But that is some people's.
Yeah, it is. It doesn't make their story any less romantic.
Yeah. Just don't get a full-blown map of the world.
Yeah, so we see Nate, a lot of family stuff, and they're building him up well. This is the first time we met his sister, right?
Yeah.
And of course, she's building him up, and they're at this party at the home. That's when the map comes out.
Arts and craftsy.
Yes. Okay. Well, this is what I want to talk about. So we go from, I think maybe the theme of this episode is once we've chosen the people we're going to be around, that we're going to do life with. So you've got this going on in most of the storylines. You got the team, literally tying themselves together, doing life with each other. And that's, that culminates the end of the end scene of the episode, which we'll talk about in a minute. You've got that storyline. You've got Keely and Jack, with Jack showering Keely with, what do we want to call it? Just trinkets, right?
Fancy trinkets.
Yeah, because she can afford more. But I think we're supposed to see it as like, yeah, this isn't real love, right? And then that is contrasted with Nate making the something out of the shoebox. What do you call
diorama?
The diorama. So here's Nate, who's not going to shower her with things, which he probably could do. He's making more money as the coach of West Ham. He probably could, but instead he's doing something. He's making a romantic gesture. He's making something with his own hands and taking the inspiration from his dad's map, wooing of his mom. And I think you're supposed to see that contrast. I think you're supposed to see that.
Maybe.
Because, like, if we swing it back to Jack and Keely, what is Jack showing of herself to Keely through this? Nothing.
Not
Well,
necessarily.
She might be showing something, but it's not. It's not good.
It is good, because what she is showing is she actually pays attention, because she bought one of Keely's favorite books, first edition. How rare it is to find a first edition from Jane Austen. She knows Keely's favorite flower. She's like, okay, you deserve all the flowers.
But she's overcompensating for something.
She is overcompensating for something. But what that is, we don't know. But being a good listener is not a bad thing.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Cody just put me down again. You're winning this episode. Cody's the winner of the episode. It is funny.
I will start working through you.
The Nate Siri stuff is hilarious, because he asks Siri, how can I tell if a girl likes you or is just being kind to you? And Siri, of course, says, well, after Siri goes, yes, Wonderkind. He's programmed Siri to call him Wonderkind, which shows us that Nate's not totally, he's not back yet. He's getting there.
He's really close.
Yeah, but he's not totally back, because he's got his phone calling him Wonderkind, which was admittedly kind of funny.
I might do that.
But I think by the end of this episode, we see Nate in a place that he hasn't been since season 1. When he's going to ask her out on the date the first time. He goes in, he gets nervous, he goes to the bathroom, and there's a moment there where you think he's about to spit on the mirror.
Which is gross.
Yeah, like he did, though, in season 2, and his face changes, and that's when he gets the idea to go make something. And it's almost like, okay, he's beating this. He's beating this part of himself. I mean, he's clearly scarred from rejection.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the rejection just, when you get hurt by being rejected, it just keeps hurting. And then you hurt yourself. And that's like Nate's whole storyline, right?
Pretty much.
You end up self-rejecting, which he did.
And now he's back to being a positive Polly.
Yeah. The only thing left is the very obvious coming reconciliation, right? Because it's happening.
Well, they have to play AFC Richmond at AFC Richmond.
Cody, it's happening.
I know. I'm just saying that they have to play each other, and so the reconciliation will happen.
Are we
then.
really going to have to wait for the last episode?
I hope so.
Don't make me wait for the last episode for some good Nate reconciliation. Any more we want to say about Nate's storyline? It's sweet.
He bites it in the street, ruins the diorama because the car runs over it. But he still is happy-go-lucky and asks her out.
Right. He's not embarrassed about.
Which I was embarrassed for him.
He's actually better than season 1 Nate at this point.
Mm-hmm.
He's progressing instead of regressing.
He's trending in a positive direction.
I feel so good about Nate. I'm so excited about where the storyline's going. By the way, the girl's in. She's in. She's into him.
So I'm just waiting for Rupert to say you have to dump this waitress or hostess at a restaurant and date a model. You can maybe keep her as a fling, but she can't be who's on your arm. And then that causes Nate to quit and go to AFC Richmond.
Lucifer has been conspicuously absent in the last couple episodes.
He has.
Lucifer Rupert.
Yes.
Yeah. Or as we like to call him, Al Pacino from The Devil's Advocate. Because I think in this allegory, he's definitely the devil. And you're right. He's going to come in and demand or say something. I mean, he's going to push Nate away for good.
Considering how the whole club has been pushing him to all the fancy elitist things in life, including going on a date with that model.
Yeah.
It's coming. I'm calling it.
Surely he's not going to go back.
I'm calling it.
Let's move on to Sam, because Sam's probably the main storyline in this episode.
Love Sam.
Yeah, Sam's great. Sam Obisanya is one of the best characters
In TV history.
There's so many characters, so you can't really say that he's underused because they can't focus on so many of the characters. But every time they do focus on Sam, you wish you could get more. You wish you could get more Sam. Sam, this his storyline is clearly the best storyline of the episode, in my opinion. It revolves around his restaurant. His restaurant's very popular. It's booming. They start off by he comes in to ask for a table
for one.
Yeah, for his because he's got a special guest who we find out is his father. I mean, the restaurant's named after him.
Hola.
And at first she's like, we're booked on Fridays for months. But she says she'll make it happen. Meanwhile, there's the migrant crisis rears its head in his storyline. When we've kind of seen clues of this from the chef.
Yeah.
In the restaurant. The prime minister, we see them on TV. They're all watching it in the kitchen.
Which he has a great line early on in this episode with the chef. Because he's like, it does not do you well to be this angry this early in the morning.
Yeah. Well, there's some biblical things going on here,
oh, yeah.
Especially in this storyline.
So this is probably why this story in this episode, I think, is really great. And I'm geeking out and nerding out about it, is because through his and Ted's story, I think that there's some strong biblical themes. And just some strong human, just basic truths.
Yeah. So let's focus on the building of this to get to this part, because Sam in a heated moment responds to the crisis, which we see. Which, first of all, let's speak plainly. There is a migrant issue in Europe. From all of the refugees coming from the Middle East. And I don't know, we're both semi-apolitical, I would say.
Try to be.
To which my stock answer, especially in America. So let's, first of all, in the United States, the migrant issue is much different than in Europe. And especially in England, where you're talking about a lot less land space. So... first of all, let's say that the contexts are wildly different, but usually my stock feeling here when dealing with the migrant crisis or the southern border of the United States is I feel like, well, we have to have a heart for people who are literally running away from their homes because they feel that necessary, but also you need to keep in mind the safety of the people who are already living here. You do have to keep both there needs to be some sort of balance. I am not versed enough on the England situation. I know it's a big deal there though.
Yeah.
So it's a hot button issue. Sam engages on Twitter.
So at first,
it's a pretty reasonable tweet.
Yeah. He's like, well, let's see what a little subtle kind word from an angel may
refers to her better angels. He's appealing
Yes.
to her better angels. That's the end of the tweet. And Twitter, like it does, only knows how to ratchet up the anger and the stress and the anxiety and just the meanness. When she tweets back, footballers should leave the politics to us and just shut up and dribble, which is a direct reference to the whole Laura Ingraham and LeBron
James.
Yes. That's a direct quote.
This is a very much a crossover, relatable moment for an American audience, and if there's an audience across the pond that like, we are dealing with this crisis, and we in America have athletes that are definitely very outspoken on social and political causes, and we have witnessed this rhetoric verbatim.
Yeah. Well, and that's where the comparison is a little awry as well. So this situation looks way more severe that a prime minister would respond to Sam, who's not LeBron. LeBron is very outspoken about political things often. So assuming that Sam hasn't been and is now being, what's the word I'm looking for? Inspired to do that now. Although he was inspired to fight for his country.
Yeah, they
politically
stopped their sponsorship.
Yeah. But this is a far cry from that as he's inserting himself to England politics now.
Yes.
And so the comparison to him and LeBron's not really close because LeBron is way more political in his social media than I'm assuming Sam would be. So it makes the response by the prime minister almost like kind of over the top cartoonish in a little, I understand what they're doing.
Yeah. And again, with a lot of the writers being Americans, they might be also trying to play the prime minister more like one of our previous presidents past as well, in which some would respond willy-nilly with their tweets.
Well, clearly you know where the writers stand.
Yes.
The writers of Ted Lasso clearly are on one side of the issue, which I said before, there is things you have to balance here. But there are in most issues.
Mm-hmm.
There's a balance that needs to be struck on most things. And that's something that, doesn't really happen a lot in our current commentary, our current conversations about most issues. Is we don't really want balance. We just want our way, one way or the other. And we see that here in this little back and forth. The tweets escalate between Sam and this until finally he shows up to his restaurant. It's been trashed.
Yeah.
Someone has broken in and vandalized his restaurant. They have spray painted on the wall, "Shut up and dribble." And this, first of all, I don't know if most people know how common this actually is. This is pretty common. And in fact, I know the first thing I thought of was, and it's common all the way around. So where we live in Kansas, there was a restaurant that opened up in Lawrence, Kansas, which is one of the few liberal places in Kansas. And the owner of the restaurant they figured out he had contributed to the campaign of a Republican governor wannabe. Dude didn't even win the governor.
Yeah.
And they started vandalizing his restaurants, vandalizing the worker's car, and he had to close the restaurant. And so this happens quite a bit. And I'm sure it happens the other way around. Like we see in this episode. I'm sure conservative, extreme people will do it to outspoken people on the other side. And so what I want to say is, this is unfortunately realistic and ridiculous.
Very ridiculous. Heartbreaking.
Yes.
And especially so we as an audience know Sam's backstory, where in our real world settings, oftentimes when we learn the backstory of people that have been victimized and have had hateful things happen to them, we then see their humanity and we connect to them like we do in Sam in this episode.
What I really appreciate is that they really displayed social media's role in the escalation, which I really appreciated that and again, I'm not surprised because Ted Lasso has been a really smart show.
Oh yeah.
And so even though we know where the writers stand, at least they put the onus on a real culprit in our society and our cultures, which is the role of social media in this extreme anger.
Yeah.
And the way it escalates everything. Enter Sam's father, who I want to be my father.
Yes.
He's amazing, played by Nonzo Anozie, who you may remember from season 2 of Game of Thrones, or you may not remember him.
I feel like he's been something else because
he's very recognizable.
Yes.
But he comes in. He said he was going to take him to the restaurant, but he wasn't going to because it got trashed. But then his father kind of, I wouldn't say convinces him, but nudges him into taking him, right?
Oh, so we're skipping over the practice.
What practice?
Dad shows up to practice.
Oh, yeah. No, go ahead.
Because, there's so Sam gets to the practice. He tears up the whole...
He's angry, yeah.
Setting and yelling, and it's very un-Sam. Yeah. And then you hear Samuel, in which I love the emphasis on the L. And Dad shows up, and Sam is very broken, very human. Yeah. Tears are flowing. He is welcomed by a loving embrace from a loving father.
Well, and I'm glad that you reminded me that because I was about to skip over and forget that, which we shouldn't because it's a callback. It's a callback to Jamie standing in the locker room, having had a fit of anger against his father for good reason, and Roy embracing him and him breaking down and letting out that pain, which is kind of like when you see the character slump into the arms of the person that's comforting them. That is the release of that. It's a healthy release of the anger, right?
Yeah.
And it was so wonderful to see that. And it's definitely a callback to when it happened for Jamie. And the dad says something very cool that gave me all the biblical vibes, where he says, "Don't fight back, fight forward." And he's saying to him, it's like, no, don't retaliate. And we talked about this with kind of the feeling of Shalom and Gehelig, and you don't get to that place. You don't get to Gehelig or Shalom by feeding anti-Gehelig to the system, right?
Yeah.
And that's what the father's saying. He's saying, yeah, you can't keep escalating the fight if you want it to get to this place.
Mm-hmm. And then, so now we can go back to the restaurant because we can go back to the practice to transition to Ted, but yes. Yeah.
So he takes him to the restaurant. The team is there.
The whole team.
And this is, again, I think why it's a continuation of Gehelig, the last episode, where we're seeing the team fight for each other in a way that's and learn what it means. And like I said, I thought the theme of this episode is, now that we've chosen we're in this together, how do I show love? How do I love you? And in this, you get that. The culmination of this episode is the team saying, we're here for you and we're going to help you rebuild your restaurant. Although Sam does say, leave the broken mirrors in next to the seats, which I thought was a nice touch.
Yeah. Which kind of remind me of, and this is going to be very random, but there are Buddhist monks that make these beautiful, beautiful tapestries. But they purposely make a flaw within it, whether it's really big or really small. Most time it's minute, because nothing is perfect. There's always room for healing, for working towards something better.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Anything else we want to talk about? Do we want to go back to Ted?
Oh, heck yeah.
Okay,
I
let's
don't
go
know
back to
how
Ted.
you could skip that. Okay. So, oh my goodness. Like for most of the episode, Ted is definitely taking a back seat. But there's two big moments. And so for me, I think the major culmination of the episode happens with Ted.
And
But I'll start with
okay,
both moments. I'll get to
I
the
thought you were
moments.
going somewhere else.
No. So we'll start with Ted and Sam's dad. So there's a moment Ted peeks in and he's seeing the father-son interaction, and I'm like, oh, this is going to break Ted. It's going to bend his will, and he's on the first flight back to Kansas. But instead, he enters in. He's quite pleasant. He's like, well, if you want, you can sit out this practice. And Sam's dad's like, no, you're going to go practice now. And then they have this funny scene about candy and cornstarch or corn syrup.
The bad sugar,
The bad sugar.
as we call it here in America.
Yeah. But so Ted gets this father-son interaction and he's okay with it. Where in past episodes, I think this would have broke him.
It didn't trigger him.
Yeah.
And we revisit a common theme of the show, fathers and sons.
Fathers and sons. And then, so the big thing, big thing.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this.
So they get their butts handed to them 3-1. And everyone, like, there's a little bit of glimpses of happiness because they actually figured out how to work as a team. But Trent comes in, beaming ear to ear, has been wanting to get something off his chest, and he finally gets it off.
Yeah, he's had an epiphany.
He's
Because
had
I
the
think
epiphany.
we see confusion from Trent on all of this. He's kind of almost bemusement as they're working the total football.
Yeah, total football. There's 4 keys. They've only come up with 3 of the keys.
But Trent sees something in the second half.
Trent sees something in the second half, which during halftime, they had a potential key, and Ted's like, that's not it.
Yeah.
But that's good. But Trent sees that it's Ted Lasso. All these mini interactions that build upon each other and build up the trust in the community that this total football will work. And it's all because of these many moments that thousands have happened over the past couple of seasons.
It does Trent see that Ted is progressing as a person. Remember why Nate goes to the bad side? Because Ted made Nate feel seen, but that was all Ted could give at the time. Now we're going full circle where Ted always made people feel seen. He'd talk to anybody, which is good. But maybe Ted was unavailable for relationships, think his ex-wife. He's just not there in it. He's just not fully giving of himself. Now we have a Ted and a team that are fully giving themselves. This is how we love. That's the theme I keep coming back to this episode. And Trent, I think, sees that. He sees the culmination of everything. And he says, like, just like you said, Cody, he says, like, everything you've done led to this.
And so for me, this is kind of like the idea behind, and this is my viewpoint, but the idea behind Pop Culture Pastor is that we do have these many moments, these many interactions that we have with people at cons, on social media, through the podcast and the radio show, and that we build an environment that people feel trusted, people feel safe, people feel that they can be vulnerable, because total football is going to make defenders potentially play the front, which is a completely different position. The front and potentially be clear in the back, which would be make most front players feel vulnerable. And so you have to have a level of trust and a level of community. And within a lot of, I guess, churches that are doing good and are actually growing, is that they do have a welcoming community, a community that's close knit, that when something bad happens to one, they're willing to go help in whatever ways they can, which we saw with the team when Sam's restaurant got vandalized. They all pitched in. They all made a moment. So that way Sam's dad could see his name lit up in neon, in which before then, like, I don't even know if Sam had told his dad what the restaurant's name was.
It didn't seem like it.
And like, so for me, I really think that Ted, you get a lot of the football building, like, oh, we're doing this and the team's going to do this and this will be the turning point. But you also get this moment of relationships. It's all about relationships. And he is making relationships that are changing. And honestly, if Trent Krim publishes this book, I would buy it.
Yeah, and it seems like Trent clearly knows where he's headed with his narrative now. It was so, by the way, super adorable to see him that excited. Because that's so out of character for him. And I think you're right. And I think that if God loves soccer, which why wouldn't he? I think his favorite offense would be total football. I think so. Hey, what did you guys think of the episode? Oh, we didn't even do do we want to rattle through those real quick? Who's the winner of the episode?
The winner, I think, is honestly, it's Jamie. Because Jamie actually got a leadership role. And like, it wasn't that he wanted to be the guy.
Yeah.
He wanted to lead through serving others. And which you see that in the goal that is scored. Because Jamie had a chance to take the shot. Jamie chooses not to. Jamie's willing to play a decoy to help others fully succeed. And so servant leadership, Jamie.
Beautiful moment. Beautiful moment. I'm going to go with Sam Obasanya and co-winner, his dad. His dad's awesome. But I won't argue with Jamie.
That's full of sage wisdom about anger and how you should not dwell on it.
Yeah. Loser of the episode. Is there a loser of the episode for you?
Rebecca
was rough this episode. It was a little rough.
Otherwise, Leslie, because he spilt hot tea on them.
I'm going to go with Jack.
Ayo!
I'm going to go with Jack. That's an easy answer, though, because she's not a core member of the cast.
Yeah, I'm willing to tear everyone apart only for them to be built back up.
And how many mustaches out of 10?
9.5.
Man, you love this episode.
Yes.
This, like I said, this wasn't one of my favorites.
This was like Jonah meets Jesus meets a whole bunch of other biblical themes. Like, we could have done a whole hour and a half longer.
Yeah.
But
super cool themes running through the episode. And for me, it was just kind of like tying to last episode. So I came down a little bit off it. I think I'm going to give it a 6.5, but you're talking me into it. Maybe I'll go 7.
I mean, if we average out, we're at an 8, which is about where we're typically at. So
the practice was a little much for me. The slapstickiness of the practice, like the captain kicking the ball, taking his first corner kick ever and kicking it so far that it broke the window and made Leslie spill tea.
which Captain and Danny were at the NFL draft. They got to announce a draft pick from England.
That's kind of cool.
It is.
All right. What'd you think of the episode? Tell us what you would have rated it, and make sure and comment on the post for this pod. And stay tuned for our next big pod that drops on Fridays. Of course, subscribe if you haven't already to the pod, and follow us on our social medias. And we will see you next time.